The night air smells faintly of clove, cinnamon, and something even softer, jasmine maybe. Or memory. You're standing in a dim corridor lit by oil lamps that flicker like thoughtful sighs. The walls are carved teak, smoothed by time and generations of robes brushing past. You hear distant gamelan music, its notes curling like smoke into the silence. A rooster murmurs somewhere, confused about the hour. And yes, you probably won't make it through this day. So, before you drift off entirely, go ahead and tap the like button with all the urgency of a Javanese noble arranging flowers. Maybe subscribe too slowly with purpose. And tell us where you're listening from and what time it is. Especially if you're curled up in a silk robe or pretending your bed sheets are court regalia. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. You take your first barefoot step onto the smooth tiles of the Cretan, the royal palace of Java. The year is hazy, as is the century. That's fine. Time here is more suggestion than rule. You're in the court of a sultan whose power rests not in swords or shouting, but in perfume and poetry. The hall smells like sandalwood and rose water. Courtiers float by in batik garments that ripple like pond water. Their greetings are silent bows. No one hurries. Even the breeze seems to walk, not run. You reach the inner courtyard just as the sun begins its descent, casting a golden lattice across carved wooden screens. In the center of the garden, the Sultan reclines beneath a frangiapane tree. He is barefoot, with rings on every toe and a poem in progress balanced on his knee. His crown is simple woven gold and jasmine. The scent is how you know he is royal. Your historical fact in classical Javanese courts, power was often expressed through refinement and grace rather than brute force. A king's ability to maintain cosmic harmony, called Ratu Adil, was tied to his inner balance and poise. Not unlike a yoga teacher who also controls rainfall. He gestures for you to approach not with words, but with the tilt of his sandalwood fan. You obey, because it's impossible not to. Even the birds have paused mid-minus note. He offers you a taste of tea brewed with lemongrass and ginger. It's hot, slightly sweet, and somehow wise. You sip, and your shoulders drop a few centimeters closer to the earth. A servant enters carrying a silver bowl of water perfumed with pandan leaves. She washes the Sultan's hands with reverence so delicate, it feels like prayer. Another servant recites the day's horoscope from a palm-minus-leaf scroll, pausing between verses for the cicadas to finish their commentary. Obscure tidbits of Javanese kings wore secret perfumes made from rare blossoms that bloomed only once a year. These scents were believed to carry spiritual resonance and possibly ward off nosy Dutch envoys. The Sultan asks if you write poetry. You say no. He looks at you kindly, as if that answer will change soon. He taps the ground beside him. Sit. Watch. Breathe. So you do. And the garden slowly becomes the world. The kale move like Presterkozip. The trees rustle like verses being edited. And somewhere, behind the frangiapane, someone is singing a love poem so quietly it sounds like remembering. Historians still debate whether this court was more political theater or spiritual sanctuary. But tonight, it is simply a poem you have wandered into. And you're not quite ready to leave the last line. The Sultan hums a final note. A gong sounds gently in the distance. Dinner will be served soon, but first there will be incense and another poem. Of course there will. You remain in the garden until the stars begin to gossip with the moon. The air cools, but not enough to shiver. Just enough to make you want another cup of that thoughtful tea. Someone has replaced it already. It smells like lemongrass and vanilla now, because this palace anticipates your moods better than you do. A procession begins, not the kind with fanfare and clanging cymbals, but one paced like a lullaby. The courtiers return, this time carrying fans, flowers, and scrolls of golden script. At the front, a court poet leads the way with a book that might as well be the wind in hardcover. You follow because this is what one does here. Resistance is for lesser kingdoms. Inside the banquet hall, the scent of roasted coconut and banana leaf floats above long tables dressed in woven mats and delicate silver dishes. No one speaks above a whisper. Even the laughter sounds embroidered. The Sultan arrives last, not because HES late, but because time waits for him. HES changed robes. Now deep indigo with embroidered cranes. It's the textile equivalent of a full moon on a still lake. Your historical fact Javanese royal courts often hosted way-unculate shadow puppet plays that could last through the entire night. These performances weren't just entertainment, but spiritual and political storytelling, aligning the ruler with divine narratives. Basically, Netflix binge minus watching, but with cosmic consequences. Tonight's play will follow the story of Arjuna, the elegant warrior with impeccable cheekbones and even better manners. The puppeteer, called the Dolang, sits behind a screen with a coconut mine, a soil lamp casting dancing shadows. His voice slips into different characters as easily as silk slides across skin. You eat slowly sticky rice, grilled eggplant, something wrapped in palm leaf that tastes like distant thunder. The food is spiced just enough to make you feel mysterious. Obscure tidbits from court recipes were composed like poetry ingredients added based on syllabic counts or metaphorical meaning. There's a dish called nasi mi gono that literally translates to confused rice, and it's deliciously cryptic. As Arjuna battles demons of doubt and divinity behind the screen, the Sultan leans toward you and whispers, "Good stories don't need endings. Just pauses." You nod like you understand, which is a good instinct in any palace. The gamelan plays on soft, metallic, eternal. You find yourself swaying, not dancing, just allowing. Historians still debate whether the sultans of Java ruled through spectacle or subtlety. But as the puppets flicker and the scent of jasmine rises again, you begin to suspect it was neither. They ruled through rhythm. The sultan finishes his tea. He closes his fan. The play continues without him. So you step outside, into a courtyard lit by a single oil lamp. And the quiet there is so perfect, it feels like punctuation. Morning returns like it always does here, softly, respectfully, as if it's bowing before entering. You wake to the sound of water dripping into a stone basin and the delicate rustle of sarongs in motion. The scent of morning incense, frankincense, patchouli, and something fleetingly floral hugs the air like a shawl. A gentle knock, and a servant opens your woven door panel. No words, just a nod, and a breakfast tray arrives bearing rice porridge, banana blossom salad, and a teacup steaming with clarity. You eat beneath a banyan tree whose roots stretch downward like ancient thoughts trying to remember the earth. The leaves filter light into golden lace. Insects hum with bureaucratic precision. Somewhere nearby, a rooster finally figures out what time it is. A bit late, but he tries. Today is a court ceremony. Not a coronation or execution, thankfully just a ritual to bless the palace rice granaries. It's more spiritual than agricultural, though the rice itself likely doesn't care. Your historical fact, the Javanese Kraton, was not just a palace, but a microcosm of the universe. Every wall, gate, and direction aligned with cosmic principles, especially the sacred Mount Merapi to the north and the Indian Ocean to the south. Essentially, Feng Shui meets imperial authority with a dash of volcano. You're a lead to the inner sanctum, one of those places where you automatically lower your voice, even if you weren't speaking. The Sultan is already there, seated cross-legged on a woven mat, with a priest beside him holding a bowl of flower petals and rice grains. I gong sounds. Not loud, not demanding, just present. The priest begins to chant. The words are ancient, the cadence hypnotic. You don't understand the syllables, but your heartbeat seems to fall in line with them anyway. The servants sprinkle water infused with jasmine over ceremonial objects, golden betel nut containers, palm-minus leaf manuscripts, and a miniature clay rice barn that looks like it belongs to a very sophisticated squirrel. Obscure tidbits, some Javanese rituals included offerings of shadow puppets not to be performed, but as sacred symbols. Imagine handing over your favorite action figure to a god and hoping they appreciate the nuance. As the ritual ends, the Sultan rises. His face is unreadable. Not in a cold way, more like a page you're not quite meant to finish reading yet. He leaves without speaking, but pauses just long enough to nod at you. And that nod stays with you. You return to your quarters, only to find a small note left beside a bowl of fungi petals. It's a poem, handwritten. You recognize the Sultan's handwriting by now. It reads, "When rice is quiet, it is still growing. When stars blink, they are not tired. When you forget this place, it will still remember you." Historians still debate whether Javanese rulers were poets by necessity or by divine hobby. But clearly some of them kept notebooks. You lie back on your woven mat, watching the ceiling fan turn like a lazy compass. The scent of jasmine follows you like punctuation. And for once, your thoughts don't need to be finished. They can just drift. By late afternoon, the air has warmed into a gentle embrace. You stroll through the outer courtyards, where artisans are at work, painters, dancers, carvers, and one man who spent the last hour drawing the same bun and a leaf over and over with what can only be described as quiet obsession. You pass through the shadow of the main audience hall. Its roof soars high above like a mountain held up by pillars of song. Each wooden beam is painted in reds, golds, and muted indigos, every pattern reflecting mythologies so old they've forgotten their myths. Inside, dancers rehearse. Their movements are precise, slow, and breathtakingly elegant, each gesture a word, each breath a sentence. They move as if time has to ask their permission to pass. You settle at the edge, unnoticed, which is the best kind of watching. Your historical fact Javanese court dance, particularly the bedhaya, was traditionally performed by 9 women in perfect synchronization. It was not just a performance, but a spiritual offering believed to connect the royal court to the sea goddess Nyira. The dancers begin a full run. A gamelan orchestra accompanies them, gongs, metallophones, bamboo flutes, each note unfolding like petals, with space between sounds so rich it feels like silence is part of the music. Their eyes stay low, their hands speak volumes. You swear one dancer just conveyed heartbreak, loyalty, and rainfall all in a single wrist turn. Obscure tidbit dancers sometimes prepared for bed higher with spiritual fasting, avoiding garlic, loud noises, and even mirrors. Apparently, too much reflection distracts from transcendence. Not a bad rule, really. You don't realize how long you've been there until the light shifts again, gold softening into honey. A young dancer notices you and smiles. Not the look at me kind. More that you see it too, don't you? Kind. You nod. You do. As the rehearsal ends, the gamelan fades into silence as if tucked beneath a blanket. The dancers disappear into the back halls like ghosts with perfect posture. You leave the hall and find a shaded bench beneath a tamarind tree. The breeze is finally curious again, rifling through your sleeves and bringing with it the scent of cloves and something like sweet smoke. Historians still debate whether the bedhaya was meant for the gods, the rulers, or just the act of beauty itself. But here, in this moment, it feels like it was meant for you. You close your eyes, not to sleep, just to listen more deeply. And in the darkness behind your eyelids, the dancers still move. Slow, sure, eternal. You awaken not with a jolt, but like a feather slowly settling on water. Outside, the shadows are long and delicate, stretching across the palace courtyard like sleepy cats. The curtain never truly sleeps. It simply changes tempo like a song that knows when to whisper. This morning, you're invited to the Royal Library. Yes, it exists. No, it doesn't smell like dust. It smells like sandalwood, beeswax, and the careful breath of history. The building is low, lined with carved wooden shutters, and guarded by stone lions who seem too elegant to snarl. One of them appears to be smirking. Or maybe it's just the moss. Inside, the library is quiet, but not silent. Pages turn with the same rhythm as falling leaves. Scribes whisper to themselves. A nearby rooster makes an editorial comment outside the window. The books are not bound in leather, but in palm leaves etched with incantations, myths, court records, and what may or may not be dinner recipes disguised as love spells. Your historical fact, the Javanese court kept detailed chronicles known as B.A. Bad, which blended fact, myth, and political narrative into one seamless fabric. They weren't just written history, they were living ideology. Like reality TV, if it were sung and memorized by priests. You're handed a palm-minus-leaf manuscript. The scribe bows and gestures for you to sit. You do on a cushion embroidered with gold thread that somehow manages to be softer than your thoughts. The B.A. Bad you're e-reading is about a king who dreamed of a talking white elephant. He followed it for 7 days until it vanished into the sea. That same night, a lotus bloomed in his rice field. Everyone agreed it was symbolic, though no one could decide of what. Obscure tidbit in some court texts, metaphors worst act so densely that even scholars debate whether a black cloud means a literal storm, political betrayal, or just a really bad breakfast. You smile at the ambiguity. It's soothing. Not every sentence has to lead somewhere. Some just want to sit beside you and keep you company. As you read, a light drizzle begins outside, tapping the roof like someone trying to remember a tune. The smell of wet earth drifts in, blending with the scent of old ink and lemongrass. The librarian offers you tea without speaking. It's warm, slightly peppery, and you suspect it knows something you don't. Historians still debate whether babads should be treated as historical records or literary fiction. But the scribe beside you doesn't seem to care. He just keeps writing line after line, like truth is a long conversation that never really ends. Eventually, you return the manuscript and step outside. And the lion statue looks more smug than ever. The rain has passed. The earth steams gently, like it's exhaling. You decide to explore the royal garden's maze of paths, pools and ponds designed less for efficiency and more for dreaming while walking. The kind of place where you don't go anywhere, but somehow always arrive. Every corner reveals something quietly magical, a tree older than dynasties, a turtle sunning itself on a marble step, a vine climbing a wall in such an elegant curve it deserves applause. Then you hear it singing. Low, resonant, and impossibly calm. You follow the sound through a hedge of hibiscus until you arrive at a modest pavilion. Inside, several older men sit in a circle with instruments, rebabs, flutes, and drums that look like they remember better times. They're singing a macapat. Your historical fact, macapat is a form of Javanese sung poetry, structured by strict meters and traditionally used to tell stories of love, morality, and cosmology. Each meter corresponds to a spiritual emotion. Basically, an emotional playlist from the 16th century, but everyone sings. The lead singer is in his 70s, if he is a day. His voice is like teakwood polished by sorrow, deep, cracked, and profoundly comforting. You sit at the edge of the pavilion, not intruding, just absorbing. The poem is about Dui Shri, the goddess of rice, who gave up her life to feed the world. Her body became seeds, her breath the wind, her ears the rivers. You're not crying. It's just the humidity. obviously. Obscure tidbits, some versions of the dewy stream it say that rice only grows if you sing to it. Silent rice, they believed, was socially awkward and didn't sprout well. This may or may not be botanically accurate. The men pause to sip from cups of tamarind water. One glances at you, nods, and continues the song. You feel oddly included. Time sways. The music wraps itself around the warm breeze. Even the birds hush. Historians still debate the origins of mac-a patent, whether it was invented in the courts or borrowed from older village traditions. But, in this moment, it doesn't matter. It exists. It echoes. Eventually, the music fades. The singers chuckle softly, like they've shared an inside joke with the gods. They bow to you not grandly, just enough to say we noticed you listening. You bow back. On your walk back through the garden, a bird sings the melody from the poem. You're not sure if it's coincidence or magic. But here, those are mostly the same thing. Late afternoon casts everything in amber. The palace corridors glow with that quiet kind of light that makes even footsteps feel poetic. You wander toward the women's wing not as a voyeur, mind you, but as an invited observer. The Sultan's sister, a known patron of the arts and scandalous ideas like independent thought, has summoned you. You pass through a courtyard framed by flowering vines. The air is scented with compact mischief. A pair of doves pretend not to eavesdrop. Inside, a group of women, cross-legged on woven mats, embroidering, composing riddles, and discussing the philosophical implications of cloud shapes. At the center sits the Sultan's sister. She's wearing a green silk kaibaye with gold minus thread cuffs, her hair in a knot so elegant it might qualify as architecture. She doesn't try, she gestures for you to sit, as though she's assigning you a riddle. Today, she says, we write letters that we never send. Your historical fact, noble women in Javanese courts were often highly educated, fluent in multiple languages, and contributors to court literature, including erotic poetry and political commentary written under pseudonyms. So yes, there were shadowy poets in gold earrings long before anonymous blogs. She hands you a poem minus leaf strip and an iron stylus. Around you, women write quietly, each word etched with care. The room hums with concentration and slow, rebellious joy. One woman pauses to add a flower petal to her ink bowl, apparently for better metaphor flow. You write too. Something gentle. Something true. Or at least rhythmic. Obscure tidbits, some Javanese love letters included encoded messages in the placement of flower stains or the spacing of syllables. Yes, pre-digit or limo-JIS existed. And they smell better. The Sultan's sister reads one aloud, not yours, thankfully. It's a letter to a moon that never responded. Everyone sighs in agreement. Even the moon, probably. Outside, a flute plays. Someone brings mango slices and candied ginger. There's laughter, but it's the kind that turns slow and smoky, like firewood in rain. Historians still debate the extent of women's influence in the courts, but the Sultan's sister seems unbothered. She sips her amaranth tea and rewrites an old proverb just because she can. You leave with ink minus stained fingers and a heart that somehow feels edited. By now, the palace feels less like a place and more like a rhythm and unfolding of breath, scent, silence, and small miracles. You wake from a nap you don't remember taking. The call of a dove lingers in the air like a question. Today's market day within the outer court walls. Royal markets are nothing like their noisy counterparts in the city. Here, everything is quieter, slower, and slightly more metaphorical. You stroll through canopies woven of palm-dyed cloth. Each stall is curated like an art exhibit. Vendors speak in soft tones. Bargaining sounds like poetry rehearsals. One merchant offers you clove cigarettes wrapped in banana leaves. Another sells carved amulets shaped like birds, stars, and morally ambiguous monkeys. You don't need any of it, but it's all somehow essential. Your historical fact Javanese palace markets were spaces not just of trade, but of controlled cultural interaction where artisans, courtiers, and even visiting ambassadors could mingle under strict decorum. Basically, the Renaissance fair meets a whisper-only museum. At one stall, an elderly man sells tiny shadow puppets no bigger than your thumb. He claims they dance when the moon is right. You believe him instantly. Obscure tidbits: some palace puppeteers use puppets as stand-ins for gossip. They de-act out scenes in the market, say. Two buffaloes arguing and everyone would know which courtiers they really meant. You buy a tiny buffalo with a smug expression and slip it into your sash, just in case you need to insult someone poetically later. The food stalls are divine. Sweet rice balls stuffed with coconut, grilled corn brushed with chili-honey glaze, jackfruit stewed until it tastes like nostalgia. You eat slowly, not just because it's polite, but because it feels like a conversation with the past. Nearby, two girls perform a duet with bamboo xylophones. One of them forgets a note and laughs mid-song. The sound rings truer than perfection. Historians still debate whether these markets were organic expressions of culture or carefully curated performances. But with jackfruit this good, it's hard to argue with either. As you leave, the stall keeper offers you a final gift: a small bag of dried jasmine flowers. For your dreams, he says. And the buffalo puppet in your sash agrees with a smug silence. The evening deepens, the kind that folds around your shoulders like a silk shawl. Eye hush falls over the curtain, not from sleep, but from a collective inward breath. Tonight is a rare event: the performance of a sacred unculate shadow play in the inner court. You are invited, which either means you've become trustworthy or interesting. The performance takes place in the Pendopo, a vast open pavilion where shadows play more tricks than politicians. The gamelan orchestra is already tuning, producing a series of bronze pings that seem to rearrange the atmosphere itself. Torches flicker in the corners. The scent of sandalwood and roasted peanuts hangs in the air like a thoughtful question. You sit cross-legged on a cushion, barely aware of time passing. You are handed a small cup of hot ginger tea and a fan woven from palm. The puppet master, or Dha Lang, arrives in a sarong and headscarf, carrying a box of leather puppets painted in gold and black. He sits behind the screen, facing the orchestra, his tools arrayed like a poet's armory. Your historical fact unculate is an ancient Javanese art form in which intricate shadow puppets made of buffalo hide are projected onto a cloth screen by firelight. The Dha Lang performs all characters, modulates voices, and controls pacing while also signaling the musicians. It's a one-man Broadway show, but with zero eye contact. The story begins. It's from the Mahabharata, but with local flourishes. Princes argue, demons smirk, sages sigh heavily. The puppets flicker, twitch, and gesture with impossible grace. Their shadows stretch across the screen like ghosts who haven't yet decided on an afterlife. Obscure tidbits: some Dha Lang were believed to channel spirits during performance. It was considered impolite and mildly dangerous to interrupt the mid-position. Try that excuse next time you forget someone's name. The drama builds. A villain loses his sword in a debate. A hero wins a war by listening better. A wise king forgives a snake. The audience watches with reverence, but also with quiet snacks. Peanut shells crack like applause. You lean into the flickering light. At some point, you forget which side of the screen you're on. Historians still debate whether Wayang stories were meant for entertainment, political messaging, or cosmic calibration. But as the Dha Lang raises a puppet shaped like a winged horse, you realize it's probably all three. The play ends near midnight. The fire dims. The puppets are packed away like myths taking a nap. You return to your room, the taste of ginger still warm in your throat. And outside, the shadows continue their quiet rehearsals across the palace walls. Morning returns slowly as if it too stayed up till late watching puppets. You rise with a sense of calm, or maybe just the residual wisdom of a buffalo minus-shaped puppet in your sash. Today is different. You've been invited to the royal baths. Not for bathing exactly, but for observing what courtly cleanliness looks like when it's ritualized, theatrical, and scented with sacred herbs. The bathing complex is a sanctuary within the sanctuary. Pools of water lie still beneath sky minus open roofs. Whitewashed walls glow in the soft sun. Steam curls from stone spouts shaped like mythical fish. Everything here seems to whisper, "Shall not disturb the purity." You're guided to a marble bench beside the main pool. The royal attendants graceful, focused move like dancers. They pour pitchers of water over the shoulders of noble women seated on lotus minus-shaped stools. There's laughter, quiet singing, the clink of gold bangles. Your historical fact, the Tamansari Water Palace in Yajikarta, was built in the 18th century as a royal garden, bathing complex, and meditation space. It even included an underground mosque and tunnels for escape or quiet reflection. A spa day with architectural side quests. A tray of offerings is placed near the edge: rose petals, slices of lime, turmeric, and frangiapane. Each item chosen not just for scent or beauty, but for symbolism. Turmeric for purification, lime for clarity, flowers for the soul's better mood. Obscure tidbit: Javanese courtly bathing was sometimes timed to planetary alignments. Tuesdays and Fridays were considered particularly auspicious. No one's quite sure why, but it made scheduling appointments politely complex. You're handed a small bowl of water infused with pandan and cinnamon. You sip. It tastes like everything on nothing. Like memory. Like forgiveness without explanation. The Sultan himself arrives, simply dressed, hair damp. No entourage, no announcement. He sits beside the pool and speaks softly to the head attendant. You hear laughter, genuine, unguarded. You pretend not to notice. So does the wind. A woman nearby begins to sing a lullaby in a language older than the Kraken itself. Her voice doesn't fill the air, it stitches it together. Historians still debate whether these bathing rituals were expressions of hygiene, status, or spiritual realignment. Perhaps all three. Perhaps none. Perhaps they were just mornings like this. You linger a while longer, until the sun climbs high and the water's shimmer turns sharper. Then you leave, palms still warm, heart scrubbed a little softer. And behind you, the baths continue endlessly refiling with silence, scent, and something very much like serenity. The sun now floats high, casting quiet patterns on the palace walls, light filtered through lattice screens and whispering leaves. You found yourself in the Pen de Papier, ABEKSA, the Hall of Sacred Heirlooms. A place so hush-owned and docile, even time tiptoes through here. The room is dim on purpose. Thin beams of sunlight trace across wooden beams like forgotten songs. Attendants in batik cloth glide around slowly, barefoot, holding bundles wrapped in golden silk. They move as if the air is thick with memory, which, in fairness, it is. You're invited to sit. A priest minus-like figure older than most trees, and twice as serene begins unwrapping the royal pusaka. Sacred heirlooms, Chris daggers, heirloom jars, carved tilmasnums, the occasional unexpected mirror. They're not displayed. They're revealed like shy spirits. Your historical fact: Chris daggers were more than weapons. In Javanese royal tradition, they were believed to possess souls, histories, and temperaments. A Chris could bless you or sulk for weeks, depending on its mood. Kind of like your great minus uncle, but sharper. The blade is shown to you with both reverence and a touch of theatrical flair. Its wavy edge gleams faintly in the dark, like it remembers every secret it was ever sworn to. The hilt is shaped like a deity, or a bird, or possibly both. You're not sure if you're supposed to bow to it, but your spine decides to bow anyway. Obscure tidbits: some crisp blades were believed to sweat oil on significant days. The interpretations varied: Doman miracle, or just humidity, but either way, it got attention. The priest chants softly, brushing the blade with jasmine water. Not cleaning it or piecing it. Behind him, incense curls upward like the blade's shadow. You're invited to hold it. You don't. Not out of fear, but out of respect. Or maybe because the blade looks like it could read your thoughts and rate them. Historians still debate how much influence these pusaka held over royal decision-making. But the court record is peppered with stories of kings consulting their kriss before marriages, wars, or even what color to wear. The priest straps the dagger again, slowly, like tucking in a child who might dream the future. You exhale. The air feels heavier now, but not in a bad way. Just meaningful. You're led next through an arched hallway, where shadows pool like silk. You walk slowly, partly from reverence, partly because the polished floor is so reflective you're worried about stepping on yourself. Your destination, the Royal Observatory. Not for stars, though they matter, but for something stranger. The wind. Yes, the wind. Atop a modest tower sits a wooden chamber, open on all sides, its rafters strung with wind chimes, hanging reeds, and softly clacking bamboo tubes. The sounds aren't random. They're the Kratinus barometer, its natural whisper network. A young woman in indigo robes sits cross-legged near the center, her hair pinned with a sliver of bone. She listens. That's all. Eyes closed, head tilted. Occasionally, she writes something with a charcoal stylus on a leaf. Your historical fact in Javanese court tradition. Wind in natural patterns like the flight of birds or the direction of falling leaves were considered signs. Courts employed wind readers who interpreted breezes for political, spiritual, or meteorological meaning. Forecasting and fortune telling met in a very breezy handshake. She gestures for you to sit. You do. The wind shifts slightly. A new chime joins the conversation. You listen harder. It does feel like language if language was silken, spoke very, very slowly. Obscure tidbit: 1/17th century sultan reportedly postponed a royal wedding for 3 months because the wind whispered dissent. Whether the bride agreed remains unrecorded. The wind reader opens her eyes and murmurs, "Tomorrow will bring a letter. And good fruit." You nod because what else does one say to that? Also, you could go for some fruit. Historians still debate whether these wind readings influenced actual policy or served more symbolic roles. But the sultans recorded them, and acted on them, or at least used them as conversation starters. A breeze tugs gently at your sash, as if nudging you toward your next chapter. You thank the wind reader with a bow. She smiles not at you, but at the air around you. And as you descend the stairs, you wonder if the wind will remember your name tomorrow. You rise earlier today, though time is slippery in the Kratin, where sun and moon feel less like clocks and more like moods. A soft knock, a folded note, and a basket of guava appear at your door. It seems the wind reader was right. Again, you follow the note's directions through a quiet corridor lined with batik strict walls and burkages where no birds live anymore, just feathers, as if the birds outgrew the palace and left their softest pieces behind. Your path leads you to the royal library. Not the main one where scribes sit in eternal debate about commerce, but a smaller, hidden wing. The scent here is a blend of dust, cloves, and wisdom that hast spoken in 100 years. A place where books are kept not because they're useful, but because they're loved. Your historical fact: the courts of Java maintained libraries of palm-leaf manuscripts called lontar, inscribed in Old Javanese and Kawi script. These contained everything from history and law to healing recipes, erotic poems, and astronomy charts. Imagine if your candle smelled like nutmeg and judgment. You're handed a pair of reading gloves and a cushion. An elder librarian who may or may not blink pulls a scroll from a velvet-lined niche and unrolls it carefully. The text swirls in ink like vines trying to become words. You do not read Old Kawi, but that's okay. The librarian reads aloud with the kind of voice that makes vowels feel ancient. The story is about a prince who argues with a mango tree and loses, philosophically. Obscure tidbits: some royal manuscripts were so treasured they were bathed on holy days, washed with flower water and wrapped in silk, not unlike royal family members. The librarian pauses only to sip tea from a tiny, handleless cup. You're not sure where the tea came from, but the cup seems older than democracy. You spend hours here, turning pages that feel like bark and listening to the silence between sentences. Outside, the rain begins. Not hard, just insistent. A rhythm like someone tapping wisdom gently on the window. Historians still debate whether these archives were intended for practical use or symbolic continuity. You wonder if the books carry the way. Probably not. They're busy dreaming of mango trees. As you leave, the librarian hands you a slip of bamboo with a single word inked in black lupa. You look it up later. It means to forget, or maybe to let go. Language is tricky like that. Evening again. The palace takes on that golden hush that feels halfway between celebration and sleep. Tonight is something special. I return. The Bedhaya dancers will perform. You're led back to the main pavilion, swept and perfumed and glowing with hundreds of oil lamps. Their flames quiver slightly, as if nervous to witness what's coming. The dancers enter in silence. 9 of them, dressed in matching deep indigo and gold threaded sarongs, their hair high and glistening with coconut oil and jasmine buds. Each step is measured. Each movement slow enough to be considered a kind of meditation. You've never seen stillness move this much. Your historical fact: the Bedhaya is a sacred court dance traditionally performed by 9 female dancers in perfect unison, often considered a ritual offering to the spirits, ancestors, and even the mythical queen of the Southern Sea. Yes, a royal dance with supernatural subscribers. You sit near the gamelan, where bronze gongs bloom gently into the air. The drum taps like distant thunder thinking about approaching. The dancers begin not with a burst, but with a breath. Arms float. Eyes remain half, mind is lowered. Anklets barely whisper against the polished floor. This is not entertainment. This is invocation. Obscure tidbit: the 9 dancers once had to maintain ritual purity before performing, including periods of silence, fasting, and even sleeping with symbolic objects under their pillows. No pressure. You lose track of time. That's the point. The movements stretch minutes into silk. At one moment, all 9 tilt their heads in perfect sync, as if listening to something only they can hear. You blink. They're suddenly closer. Then farther. Then folded into an arch that resembles a wave for a prayer. Historians still debate the dance's origins. Some say it was a royal dream, others a gift from sea spirits. But no one denies its effect. Watching the Bedhaya is like listening to poetry underwater. As the final step lands, the room exhales. The oil lamps seem brighter, as though they've remembered something important. You return to your room, walking slower than usual, as if your body is still echoing those steps. And somewhere, far off, the sea probably nods in approval. By now, the palace feels like a part of your body, its rhythms matching your breath, its shadows more familiar than your own thoughts. You walk with quiet confidence, not because you know where you're going, but because you've learned that the direction matters less than presence. Today, your guide, a boy no older than 12, says only, "We go to the tree." You follow, past the pigeon courtyard, past the spot where you first saw the tortoises warming themselves at dawn, past the shrine where offerings appear with no names attached, and finally through a crumbling arch that guards nothing anymore. And there it stands, the tree, a giant banyan, older than stories. Its roots snake down from branches like heavy thoughts trying to touch the earth. You've seen temples with less conviction. Beneath it is an old man who may or may not be part of the root system. He gestures for you to join him. You do, cross-legged in the patch of filtered light that feels older than sunlight. No one speaks. Not for a while. And that's the point. Your historical fact, banyan trees in Java were often seen as the dwelling places of spirits and were used as court-gathering places, ritual centers, or even silent judges in community disputes. Yes, the trees weren't rusted to listen better than humans. The man finally speaks. A single word, Danger. Listen. And so, you do. You hear the wind winding through the roots, the leaves conversing in a dialect of sighs, a distant bell from the palace marking the hour you no longer count. Even the silence seems to hum. Obscure tidbit in Javanese animism. Some believe that every large banyan tree is home to a guardian spirit who can grant clarity, but only to those who don't ask questions out loud. You sit until your legs forget their usual complaints. The boy returns, offering you roasted peanuts wrapped in paper printed with yesterday's news. He doesn't speak either, but he smiles like someone who understands. Historians still debate whether the tree was planted by a legendary sultan or simply grew where it pleased and gained myth by accident. But looking at it now, the difference feels irrelevant. You return to the palace one last time, not to say goodbye, just to notice. The servants nod without bowing. The buffalo puppet in your sash has softened from the heat of your body. The Chris remains wrapped, still moody but apparently content. And you? You have become part of the quiet. The lamps are dim now. Even the moon has softened her glare, floating behind a gauze of cloud. You lie back on a low platform, hands folded across your chest like a poem that never needed to rhyme. The sounds of the palace blur into a lullaby, distant gamelan notes, footsteps in grass, a bird arranging its dreams. The roof above is high, but the sky feels closer than ever. The stars blink with exaggerated patience. They've seen it all. They'll wait for you to drift. Your breath slows. The heavy air of incense, frangyapping, and ink settles into your skin like a promise. Time curls up beside you, not gone, just resting. And somewhere behind your eyelids, the banyan tree still sways, the dancers still move, and the wind remembers your name. You are part of the Cretan now. Not as royalty, not as guest, but as silence. Good night.